Hello and welcome to Free Kupo Nuts, a weekly podcast where three gamers get together and talk about all sorts of things, but mostly Final Fantasy XIV. My name is Alden, and with me I have my very good friends Nombly and Adara. We asked the fine citizens of Final Fantasy XIV for some of your biggest complaints, and in no particular order, these are 10 of our picks. But before we get into that, Nombly, Adara, how you guys doing today?
I'm not bad. How are you?
I'm not too bad. What about you, Adara?
I'm pretty good.
All
I have
right.
a actually have a question for you before we get started.
Oh.
Did you ever figure out your 5 words for 4.3?
Yeah, after actually giving it some thought instead of being completely blindsided, I
That was part of the fun.
Yeah.
yeah, and I hate you.
Oh.
But no,
Fair
no,
enough.
I'm kidding. But no, seriously. Yeah, I completely slipped my mind at the time, but I thought of Ultima's refrain, death, happy times.
There you go.
Those are 5 words.
Those are 5 words. Took me a minute, but I eventually came out with it. So alrighty. Anyway, so let's get into this little list of ours.
All right.
Cool beans.
Starting off with number 10. One of the better selling points of Final Fantasy XIV is all of the classes and jobs can be on one character. However, we still have so many lockouts throughout the game that can force you to focus on one and fall behind in others. I wish there was a content to encourage job swapping freedom. So I believe this is in reference to the fact that we have content like Savage, where it's weekly lockout for the loot.
Yeah.
Like you get one loot piece a week, and the same thing for obviously the 24-man dungeons, where pretty much the same thing. One loot drop, it's yours, you're gone. See you next week. So
Yeah.
what do you guys feel about that?
Adara?
I actually interpreted this a different way
Oh,
because the MSQ is also gated by level throughout the entire thing. So you can't actually switch classes off because you have to focus on one to level it in order to progress the story.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's a very good point.
That's how I took this. And so yeah, it's like, oh, you can do all these things and you can learn, and like I even think about old ARR where you had to level another class in order to get your job.
Mhm.
I completely forgot about that. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my
Or
god.
like
Yeah.
raid specific abilities. Like I only leveled Dragoon because I wanted blood for blood.
Right. Yeah. No, I completely blanked on that. Wow. Yeah.
And like I'm glad that's gone because yeah, you could do side quests and stuff to level that class, but you were also locked in the MSQ at that point, and the punishment was you had to do a side job. And now it's almost the reverse, where you can't progress unless you are a specific level, which means you need to focus on one.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
And
otherwise spend a bunch of time grinding to level multiple classes at once.
which a lot of people tend to do, and usually the norm that people will collectively say is focus on one and then be done with it. Because I one actual complaint kind of relating to this was someone was saying that they felt the game was very lax and they felt no motivation to really complete it. And the MSQ, even though there was like the tried to force upon you the sense of urgency with the story and the progression, this and that. But one of the things that they mentioned in their post on Reddit was that they had leveled everything. And I mean everything. It wasn't like two or three classes like simultaneously battle classes.
Mhm.
They had everything leveled.
Hmm.
Gathering, crafting, this and that. And it was like and one of the replies was essentially because you're doing so much, you're not focusing on one thing at a time. There's no wonder you feel no sense of urgency or completion. And they weren't even like
Yeah.
they were like a fourth of the way through Heaven's Ward, and it was they were like, I don't feel the need to really progress here, and it's like it's because you kind of did that to yourself. So I don't know. I mean,
Touching on that, it's kind of like, MSQ has you on the rails pretty much, you know what I mean? Like when you're following MSQ, you're kind of very in a training wheels situation still.
Mhm.
mhm,
Like it's showing you what you can do, but like the moment you stop doing MSQ, they take the training wheels off and it's like you need to figure out what you can do to progress at this point. Like they're not holding your hand anymore.
Right. And I mean, I know they do have like certain walls where you need to be like the next level to progress. So they kind of do essentially kind of divert you to a separate path. Like MSQ, you've hit, the end as far as you can get now, go on a divergent path and then come back to the MSQ sort of thing. At least, especially in Heaven's Ward, getting to 59, like I'm pretty sure I checked this too. There were about 6 level 58 MSQ quests, and it was like, oh, you need to be 59 to continue. You're like what the hell? I just got to 58. Like,
Yeah, yeah, it
and
kind of happens like that at the end of Stormblood too, in the
Mm-hmm.
locks.
oh, absolutely. But that was obviously intended for that to happen. So whatever their intent was, I mean, it's not for us to decide. We're no mind readers here, but I mean, I think more so of what she was trying to more talk about too was the fact that, I mean, take myself for example. If you're rating, or even not even if you're rating, if you're just doing your weeklies, doing the 24 man, the weekly, well, in this case, it'd be a Omega Scape or wherever, that you are locked out to one piece a week for one class that you want to progress further, or you can kind of do both at the same time. But one thing I've always suggested that was kind of better was pick one and then have it like trickle down gear as you proceed. You know what I'm saying? Like one and then like have it like flow further down, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
I mean, people kind of do that in their raid format sometime, where like they'll have you pick a main class, which is the one you raid on, and then after that they'll pick a secondary, and it's like, okay, if nobody needs this for their main, then you can go ahead and loot on this with priority.
right. Well, I think the other thing for me especially was that I mean I rated as a red mage and I wanted to gear up my healer and I just finally got red mage to best in slot and my healer is like still somewhere at 350 or somewhere around there. So
Hmm.
I kind of do but I do everything else literally as my healer. So I kind of wanted to progress further and I kind of couldn't because all of my raid focus with the pages and everything else and all the other loot, mendacity, tombstone gear was going towards that one class.
Yeah,
Mm.
we'll
So,
talk about tomes in a second, but
right, which is
uh,
actually um, the number 9 one, weekly caps for tomes is horrible. It feels like Final Fantasy 14 punishes players who can play more than others now.
now
um,
I
go ahead.
both agree and disagree with this. I mean, I agree in the sense where it's like, once you hit your 500 or 450 mendacity, you're done for the week. Even if you hit it on, Tuesday reset, you're done. Um, it's kind of hard to progress after that, like not including rating or 24-man stuff. But at the same time, I kind of disagree because they want you to be progressing at a slow pace. Like the first week of the patch, if you come in and it's like, okay, now I'm full 370, what's the point of logging in for the next, 3 months until the next patch?
Right, because you were actually able to play more than Sally Sue, whoever. What do you think about this, Adara? How it kind of seems like this person who can play for 40, 50 hours a week versus somebody who has kids, a full-time job, and they can only play for like a couple hours a night. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like they're catering to the more casual player because they can't spend 40, 60 hours a week playing this game and doing everything and anything they can possibly do versus someone who just wants to play on a more casual standpoint.
I think the whole point of the cap on the highest level of tomes is to even out the playing field a bit. I feel like if we did not cap those tomes on a weekly basis, as much as I detest the fact that there's a cap, because while I do have a full-time job, I'm usually capped like 2 days in. I'm usually capped by like the end of day Thursday.
Hmm.
Yeah, it prevents people from getting away too quickly because those who do like have the ability to play 40, 50 hours a week, if there was no cap in place for that highest level of tome, they would be best in slot at the end of the week or at the end of the second week.
Well, they'd have all their mendacity stuff
Well,
at least.
yeah, but if that is quote unquote best in slot at the time,
Yeah.
so it levels the playing field a bit, as much as it also drives me batty that I can only earn tomes for the first 2 days of the week.
I mean, that adds like another layer on top of it, because like me personally, I'll do like an expert on reset day and then maybe another expert throughout the week, and that'll put me around 200 tomes or something like that. And
Hmm.
then I'll let the rest of it just come in as I do other content, right? Like, so it even pushes me away from doing more roulettes because I don't need to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
like mendacity comes from everywhere at this point. Like, it comes from Eureka NMs, it comes from treasure maps, it comes from Sigma normal and whatchamacallit, and savage mode.
Savage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it comes from everywhere. It's so easy to cap, and it's such a low cap that like it even like discourages me, like I said, from doing more content because I don't need to.
It does kind of raise the question of why the cap is so low, because like you mentioned, even for those of us who might play on a more casual standpoint, not that any of us here are those people, but more to the fact that it seems like even if you were to play casually like a couple hours a week, it does seem like it would be incredibly easy to just cap just by playing the game, because like you mentioned, Eureka gives it, treasure maps give it, the weekly Sigmascape gives it, like all of these things offer up mendacity tomes like it's nobody's business. So why is the cap so low, and why can't it be increased? Or, I mean, I think it does kind of steady the pace. I mean, it's almost like they're doing it for our benefit if you think about it. If they if they basically, like you mentioned earlier, Nomley, how if, oh, week one I'm already 370, now what? It kind of does create that where it's like slow and steady pace. You won't cap so quickly to where you will stop playing the game. So it's just doing it this way essentially assures that you play longer and more. So
Yeah, it's keeping us on the subscription.
treadmill,
Yeah, exactly.
which
I
you
don't
can,
fault them because they work hard on their content and they want people to use it for longer, and it's financially the correct decision.
Mm-hmm.
you can love it, you can hate it. It is what it is, and more than likely, it probably won't change because this is how the game developers see it as being fair for everyone. So I don't know. Moving on to number 8. As a new player, I'd really enjoy it if they made partying with people outside of dungeons more accessible. I wanted to play in tandem with my friend, but having to leave party for every other quest because the game refuses to just stick us in separate instances pretty much killed it. Now, for those of you who may not know, this person is referring to the fact that when you go into a storied instance, you're not allowed to be in a party. And before, this also included
Mhm.
like your chocobo, because it was considered a party member, but they've since fixed that. And yeah, you had to do the instances solo. So you would, if you were in a party with, you and a couple other friends just hanging out, whatever, you would have to drop party in order to enter this instance. Or actually, it wasn't even just story, excuse me. It would be for class and job quests as well. And any instance, any solo
Any
instance.
instance content, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not any instance content, just story content.
Combat instanced content, I
Combat
think.
instances, yeah.
Yeah,
Because I think dungeons and 24 mans are still considered
anything that would
instances.
put you into another state of character being, I guess.
Or something. Yeah, so I mean, I personally don't mind this all too much, but then again, I'm not easily bothered by stuff like this. I mean, what do you guys think? I don't know.
Well, I'm not so much annoyed by it as like it's just like an inconvenience sometimes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're in a party, you just did a roulette, and one of your friends just hit, X level. They want to go do their class quest before you go into the next roulette, so they get their ability, and they
Hmm.
have to drop out, and then it's not really like a problem, but it's like I said, it's an inconvenience. One thing I did notice, and they're kind of correct, in the beginning of the game you get these instances pretty like in hefty amounts, like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
outside your starting city.
Hmm.
And I actually started new characters with Kiki and Jack a couple months ago, and we had to drop out of party like every 10 to 15 minutes because we had Road to 60,
Yeah.
and it was getting kind of annoying. So I see where they're coming from, but like in the later stages of the game, this is not a problem at all.
Right. I will definitely agree that I feel like they've definitely eased back on the instanced content, and even with like the new update patches like 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, where they include more story, they instance only really heavy, like really impactful parts of the story, not just you went to go rescue this person, or I don't know. I mean, like it was more of a an important part, not just you fought these guys and you won, yay! And that, like they didn't have to instance that, and a lot of the stories, you know exactly what I'm talking about too. Makes no
Mhm.
sense why they would instance some of the stuff that they did, where it was just you fought off some evil villainous people, and like that was that was it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I feel
What's
like
your opinion on this, Adara?
I mean, I mostly play in like a social context, so I'm usually in a party with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Frequently you or Kiki. So when I do get kicked out, it's like, oh well, like okay, I get it. I wish there was some sort of compromise where like they just couldn't be in the same map as you,
right.
Yeah, I think
because you can
social.
enter cutscenes and
Yeah.
stuff while still in a
Yeah.
party.
Yeah, I don't know how they could fix it if they could or wanted to, because I feel like if this has been a long-standing situation, and it's either not a concern of theirs, like it is what it is, and we're just gonna have to get used to it and deal with it, sort of thing, or it's just not a complaint or an issue that they feel the need to address. I don't.
I mean, is it like a maybe it's just like a inside the code issue, like trying to pull people in your party into this separate instance that is being initiated by you.
Well, I mean, I know that they can check if people are in the. This is why I'm just wondering about if they could do it based on map location,
Mm.
because you can check if someone's in the same map as you because they do it for treasure maps. Like you
Yeah.
can't
Right.
start a treasure map unless everybody in the party is in the same map. So why can't they just reverse engineer it and check, oh, no one else in your party is in this map? Okay, you can enter this instance. Because they aren't able to assist you.
I mean, yeah, now that I think about it, that's true. Like when you think of Eureka, there are two different parties when that happens, right? Like
Yeah.
when you first go in, you become a party, and then when someone leaves, they're still technically in that party on your server because when you
Hmm.
leave, you're still in a party, right? So
Yeah.
that's weird that they can't get it to work. I don't know.
Well, they
Yeah, I'm not
maybe haven't
entirely.
tried because it's not a priority to them.
It might not just be a
Yeah.
priority, because this person also mentioned, because like they said, they were going to the store with their friend, and like you yourself even said, Nomley, probably all up to this, all on the same page. So I think this person was also complaining about the fact that you're both going through the MSQ together, so you're at both at the same point. You both meet the same instant story, and you have
Yeah.
to do solo. So it's like, why? What's so difficult about putting us both into solo instances? So I feel
Yeah,
like it
or
might
even
have.
just putting us in the same instance.
I mean, I could see them not being down with putting us in the same instance because the whole idea is you are the, like
Warrior of
Or
capital
Light.
yeah.
T, the Lord,
Yeah.
yeah, Warrior of Light. And
Yeah, I guess
so
that makes sense.
canonically, it doesn't make any sense for there to be two Warriors of Light.
But
Well,
at the same time, they
I
kind of like bring your friends to fight this thing in some cutscenes.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like you mentioned, it might be a coding issue because, well, they can do it for treasure maps. They did it in Eureka. It might have something to do with the fact of how the entry of said story instance actually works that they can't work around. Or, again, it might just not be a priority. Who knows?
Oh.
Anyways, for number 7, it seems the game developers don't care as much about improving the game as they are about making money off it to fund other projects such as Final Fantasy 15 and so on. I don't think this person, this was a condensed post. They made a very long post about a lot of stuff. One of the things they actually did mention was the Mog Station, the money grab, all that stuff. It's like, how
Hmm.
is this actually, how is the money actually developing the game? I mean, I think even Yoshi P himself even once said, because I know a lot of people were asking for Kryle's outfit.
Aren't they still asking for it, or did it come out? I don't
Oh,
remember.
not yet. No, they came out with like a rain poncho that kind of looks like his outfit for chocobos, and that's in-game item, not Mog Station. And Yoshi P even asked, because this was like a Q&A situation with the translator there and all that other stuff, kind of answering the questions for him and talking to Yoshi P, saying that I'll see if I can make it, but you guys have to promise to buy it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, that to me kind of seems like I mean, I have absolutely like no real in-depth knowledge about how development in game any of that truly works, but it kind of tells me that like there is certain like costs in developing something like this for a game like 14, to
Oh
where
yeah.
he
Oh
needs to
yeah.
cover his costs. So, well, what do you guys think about the whole idea that all the money and all the the fame that 14 has gotten, because it's gotten a lot, might not be giving 14 as much attention as it should versus games like 15, all these other ones that they're developing, not just Final Fantasy games. But yeah, what do you guys think about all that?
I mean, the first thing I kind of want to touch on is your comment about like it costs money to do things. Speaking about Kryle's outfit, like yes, it's like, oh well, you already have a game. It shouldn't cost that much to put things in, but you have to pay the developers who do the things, you know? You have
Yeah.
to pay the people who design the costumes. So yes, everything that happens behind the scenes has a cost and you're paying people for their job.
Hmm.
So like a lot of the money you make, whether it's like when you sell an outfit or when you make your subscription money or somebody's initial buy-in cost, is going to sustain the talent they're holding as somebody who works in software development. As to the money going into 14 that funds other games, I don't know how they delineate their pocketbooks. Like, I can't say one way or another. It's very likely, especially if you're a big studio that has multiple income sources, that having a game with a stable user base and a steady income does allow you to grow and expand and explore other options. And so, yeah, they probably do use some of the money from 14 to build 15, and that's objectively fine. It's how lots of publishers do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even thinking further upon it, it's not like, oh, if the game needs to make money in order for it to be developed, or it's like, wait, that doesn't.
Yeah, that doesn't
They're
make sense at all.
No, it really doesn't. If you think about it, it's like they're making money not even just on 14 specifically. They're making money on like not hundreds, but dozens of other titles, and they're obviously being funneled somewhere. I mean, if you're gonna like nitpick and track each like little dollar and cent that goes to which place, it's like, well, you need to be spending more on this game. That's a personal opinion, and it's it's very.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
It also says that you seem to like when you say, oh, they should be spending more money on X, it implies that you know how they're spending their money and how much things cost. Because it's not just, oh, let's add another outfit, oh, let's tweak this. Because some of the complaints about things that could be prepared, you hear the thing all the time about like, oh, this game was written on spaghetti code. I've made this joke. Nombly's made this joke. Alden's made this joke. And the thing is, a complete rewrite of a game isn't something you just do in 20 minutes. It's not something you do in a couple of weeks. It would take, with the amount of content that's in 14, to rewrite the game to either better use infrastructure or just compute things faster, it would take so much time. And that would just convert into more money to be spent on it.
Hmm.
Well, one thing I will just blatantly say about, at least as a consumer base, is that, like you mentioned, for them to completely rewrite it would take so much time. That sounds oddly familiar with what happened with 1.0 going into 2.0 with the
Yeah.
A Realm Reborn. Like 1.0 was a dumpster fire and they had to fix it, but they couldn't. So it's kind of like, well, we're just going to start over from scratch. And they did. And it was better for it. So it was,
Right. And how
but
much time was between 1.0 and 2.0?
not much.
Like between the time
Uh,
they blew it up and when they released.
I couldn't give an accurate response to that. I don't know offhand.
I want to say it was probably about a year, because I know they had that whole documentary about the events that happened in 1.0, and they spoke to Koji Fox, Yoshi P. They spoke to all these people, who were like on the ground floor of 1.0, and they gave their testimonies and all of the things that occurred at that time. And yeah, I'm pretty sure, obviously, to quote me on this, but it felt like it was like a 1 year's time of them, maybe even longer. I'm not sure, but felt like it felt like that was about it, right? For the
Possibly.
for them to sustain 1.0 while still releasing new content and trying to like hot fix a lot of stuff, patch this, patch that, fix this, fix that, trying to sustain the sinking ship that was 1.0. And of course, saying sorry, sorry, thank you for staying, sorry, thank you for staying the whole time, while behind the scenes no one knew that they were developing 2.0, A Realm Reborn.
Right. And here's the thing too, is like when they released A Realm Reborn, it would have been on whatever the newest technology or the newest knowledge in programming was at the time to build the best thing that they could at the time.
Mhm.
And that was quite a few years ago. Technology changes constantly. So
Right.
yes, it might be a little laggy and there's some things that don't make sense, but you have to build on whatever the foundation was, and you can't constantly overhaul the foundation of a game like this or they wouldn't be putting out as much content as they do.
Yeah,
Right.
speaking personally from like having as much time as I have with Square in the MMO field, like playing Final Fantasy 11, they're releasing content at a rate that they normally did in 11. Like this is pretty clockwork for them. They release a big amount every 3 to 4 months with like smatterings of stuff in between.
Right.
And in terms of them using funds from their MMO to pay for other projects, I mean they're a business, right?
Hmm.
They
Absolutely. And that's
their bottom line is profit.
right. And that's what it really boils down to. And one of the biggest things that, I mean, this is not really an honorable mention, but just kind of ties into all of this as well, is the cost of the subscription that off puts a lot of people. Whenever I talk to somebody, I'm like, you have to play this game. It's so good. And they're like, but $15 a month just to play a game? It's like, you're not paying $15 a month to play the game. You're paying $15 a month for them to sustain the servers, to constantly be working on it. Also, well, at the time it was just Heaven's Ward. I'm like, you pay for the base two games, but they are constantly releasing new content. So you're paying for the expansion and then so much more. That's what you're
Yeah,
really paying for. And a lot of
yeah,
people
just
don't
the
understand that
cheaper stuff.
because all they care about is spending money. It's like, why can't this game just be free? I bought the base game. And also, do people not realize who play on specifically PlayStation, we're not using, us PS4 players are not using the Sony servers. We don't need PSN to play Final Fantasy 14, and we never will.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, well, I mean, obviously, $15 a month is far more than you will ever play for PSN. But even so, it's like you get so much more bang for your buck in the in the, the big picture versus like little picture, which is $15 a month. It's no.
And the thing with paying a fee to play is like most of the people complain about this are people who don't play MMOs, where you pay for a base game and then yeah, you play the game. Like if you buy Portal 2 or if you buy like Horizon Zero Dawn or something where you play the story
But
and
then that's it.
that's it. And like sure there'll be
Hmm.
DLC you pay for, but that's what happens is like, oh, you want new content? You have to pay for the new content when it's released. It's the same idea, it's just a different pay model.
To be honest, $15 a month for the amount of time you can pour into this game in a week is really not that much to ask. Like,
Mm-mm.
if you go to a movie theater these days, like just seeing a regular movie without popcorn, without drinks, no ultra AVX or anything like that, that's still gonna run you like 14, $15 at least.
Yeah.
Plus
That's
travel costs to get to the theater, like if you don't
that's
live near one.
that's 2 hours of your time versus like
Yeah.
who knows how much time you'd spend
Like
playing
yeah,
this.
if you play 2 hours a night, 3 nights a week, and that's ultra casual, that's 24 hours for $15.
Yeah.
More or less. All right, so let's go ahead and move on from this because I feel like we can keep talking about that particular topic for a while. So, this next one, however, I already know that I can't speak much on it. I can, and that Dara maybe not so much, but normally this topic's for you. Are you ready?
Mm.
2 words: inventory space. Number six.
Only time I really had a problem with inventory space was when I was going for the craft one of everything achievement for the golden tools.
Okay.
And the reasoning for that was just because you need one of everything and you got to sell it and you need all the ingredients and you want to save money so you don't want to like constantly NPC stuff and buy new stuff. I've been fortunate that I went down to the single player subscription and then I slowly picked up a couple more retainers over time so I have extra space.
Well, I was going to ask you, how many retainers do you actually have?
Right now I have 8, but once
Okay.
once I hit my gil cap goal, I'm probably going to drop down to 4, maybe 3, like one from probably 4, one from each gathering and battle. Yeah, the space has never really been an issue, and then when they brought out the Chocobo saddlebag, like I just stuffed all my tackle box stuff in there, and orchestrion rolls that I haven't crafted into their like the faded ones.
Hmm.
But
Well,
I
one
can
thing
see
that
how it would be a problem for other people.
Well, absolutely, especially for those. I mean, it always kills me when people who just constantly complain about inventory space, and of course, those of us who are, on the same side of the spectrum, we're like, "Well, have you tried getting rid of some stuff?" They're like, "No, I can't. I'm a hoarder." It's like
Yeah.
that's supposed to validate you having no inventory space. Like, you're okay with your hoarding, but you're gonna just sit there and complain and do nothing. That's kind of, I don't know about all about all that. Well, one other thing I was gonna ask you just the other day, I was talking to you about it, how you do the exact same thing that I do, which was, if it was possible, when you're buying materials off of the market board for a specific craft, you want to have either the exact amount or close, because next thing you know, you have extra and you have to sell it back. So it just causes excess space and a lot of headache.
Yeah, this is like the main reason why when someone wants me to craft something for them, that they must bring the materials to me rather than me buying the materials myself and then having them pay me for it,
Hmm.
because the onus is on them to hit the required materials, and if they go over, they have to sell it back. Like
Let it be their problem. Yeah.
it's their problem, exactly. They're getting what they want, but they have to jump through the hoops, and I don't.
Well, one thing I even said was like, I'm your crafter, not your gatherer. So it's like, do all the
Exactly,
work for me. I'll
exactly.
pay.
That's a perfect thing to say. I'm your crafter, not your gatherer.
It's like, here's money. I'll pay you to just do all the work for me. It's like, no, meet me in the middle here.
Yeah. It's like
Well,
I have no problem crafting it. Like I'll eat food, I'll even spot the crystals. Like if you're short on cash, that's fine with me. But don't make me buy your stuff for you.
also, just a side note, just to anyone who completely off topic, and I apologize, but this is something that has been an issue that I've found as of late. For the love of God, people, if a buddy of yours, a really good friend, is crafting you something, you should still tip. I don't care if it's a complete stranger. Give them something. Give them anything. Cover the cost of their crystals, or better, yet, give them crystals, but still give them something, because they're providing you a service that you are not able to do, and they are not there to serve you because they are your friend or whomever, or because you ask nicely. So please do the courtesy and tip your crafters.
Or pull an Adara and do the reverse and just like preemptively do nice things for people that craft for you. And
Yep.
that way when you need something, you've already prepaid the tip. Like the fact that I constantly buy Nombly Thanolin topsoil and I have chamomile seeds in my bag that I gathered earlier for him.
I mean, that's more of a quid pro quo, and that's, you're paying it. But like I said, that's obviously a different means. But yeah, that's another
Yeah.
good way about doing it.
Show your crafting friends love and they
Indeed.
will
Yeah,
do you nice things.
it's like I kind of keep it as like a ledger, right? Like you have like a plus and a minus. You want to keep it kind of in the middle. Just it's fair to
Yeah,
both people. You know what I
abs-
mean?
Yeah.
absolutely. But one last thing I will say on this topic is that since we are in Stormblood and we have been receiving increased inventory space, obviously with the Chocobo Saddlebag being the biggest so far, and normally you would know this answer to this question better than I will. Do you actually remember how much inventory space we actually had before, not retainers or anything like that, our own personal inventory space? Because right now it's 140. Do you remember what it was
Before
before?
Stormblood.
Yeah, do you remember or no?
Is it
Was it like 100?
120? 110? Ugh.
It was something, whatever. It doesn't. Okay, the
It was
point
less
is
than we have now, I know that.
well, well, obviously it's less because we've gotten more. We were like, but how much more? We don't remember. No, no, it was more to the point that one thing that I even still hear, and it kills me that this player base complains about, is that it's not enough for you people. 140. Oh, I need more. Not enough. Not enough. Mm-mm. Why can't we have enough? Blah blah. But it's like y'all greedy. It's like here's some more. Like, and
You
I
just
don't
don't
know.
want the opposite problem, which in Guild Wars too. I know I go back to this all the time, but it's what I know.
Of
Yep.
course.
You were given some bag space, but then you could extend it by buying bag slots or improving the size of the bags you were given.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then which is
Uh-huh.
which is fine, it's a system, it exists. But then you get your inventory so big that it is impossible to find stuff in.
Oh
Mhm.
God, I can only imagine. But anyways, yeah,
So
I've known a couple of MMOs to sort of have that thing where it's like, you want inventory space, you're gonna have to pay. And I'm glad 14 doesn't do that,
yeah.
thankfully.
See, WoW does it great because that's another portion of their economy is cloth craft or weaving or whatever they call it in that game. That's how they make bags for inventory. They sell it to other players.
Oh, that
Yeah,
actually okay. Okay, that would be an interesting. But then, could you imagine the markup for that? Woo.
Oh
Anyways,
yeah, bags like top tier bags were expensive in that game, like mucho gold.
Yeah, same with Guild Wars 2, like a 20 slot. I think there's bigger bags now, even, but a 20 slot bag would be like 100 gold.
well, I think the thing to take away from all this is that you think it's bad, you 14 players. It could be worse. Just
It could
saying.
be
Yeah.
All
yeah,
right.
the first bag and WoW, they can't even hard code that out of the game. It's hard coded into the game. They cannot get a larger original bag.
Wow. All right, moving on to the fifth complaint. Getting into raids mid-tier is awful.
Yeah.
I I have absolutely no scope on this whatsoever because I'm gonna go ahead and put on my little raid cap and talk about the fact that I am a raid leader for this exact reason. I get to set my own rules, my own restrictions, my own times, my own boundaries. Everything kind of gets steered in my own direction one way or another. I have struggled with the fact that recruiting for members as they leave mid-tier, I can
Mhm.
kind of understand on that level, but actually getting into a group in the middle of a tier, I'm completely blank. Like I think you two would be probably better on touching on this topic than I would probably.
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with this from Deltascape last cycle, but Adara probably has a lot more experience, so I'll let her go first.
I mean, I can start with Deltascape in that I didn't really get to do it. I hit 70 right at the end of the Deltascape cycle, and people in the FC were kind enough to help me get started on clearing the Deltascape Savages. I never was in a static for it. I've successfully cleared one, like O1S, that is it, of that tier. But the current tier, yeah, I only hit a level where I was comfortable considering rating 3 months ago,
Hmm.
which is when the tier first came out, which was cool.
Right.
But
Mhm.
there's also a level of like confidence with that. And I was like, oh, you know what? End game rating isn't really a thing for me. So I'm not going to worry about it. And then I was asked by somebody in the FC to join their static. So I did with a bunch of us who are all pals. And we raided for a week.
Oh.
And then the leader of this group had to leave for work, which like happens. He got a new job and the demands of the job were more than he anticipated and he had to travel a lot for work. So he left and promoted me and one other person to co-lead it.
Okay.
And by the time we figured out what was happening and kind of filled in some spots, people were coming and going. We weren't really able to get our stuff together, so we dissolved it.
Oh.
By that point, even like as we were starting to raid and like trying to recruit people to fill in the spots, we were already mid-tier. And recruiting mid-tier when you're on early progression is really difficult because
It
Yeah.
is.
people have expectations that you already know the fight and you're like leveling in alt, or you are doing your weekly clears and then progressing on 7 or 8 when you're still working on 5 and 6. So like this is mid-tier or late mid-tier now. I have cleared 5 4 times and I've cleared 6 once. I have not stepped foot into 7 or 8. It probably won't happen. I'll
Yeah.
try again next year. Like
I can definitely agree that when recruiting for sure you're even for me personally I wanted to find someone who was kind of on par with where we were, because more often than not no group really wants to have to backpedal in
Yeah.
like in the situation that we were in. We were on 08s, trying to I think we were at the time trying to clear clown Kefka,
mhm.
and some people were still on like 07s in rage, or like they just got into 07s, or they something along those lines. And that is kind of off-putting for most groups because again they want somebody who they don't want to have to like regress in their progression.
Yeah, like I'm not going to be able to find a group this tier at this point.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say it would still be like a newer group in that it's not going to be like an established group, because obviously any tried and true established group is well beyond like wherever like you are or ever. I don't know. Like it would have to be like an actual like brand new founded group with people who are. It's very unlikely, but it's not. The thing though, it might be awful, which is true. Like no one is arguing that, of course, but it's not impossible if you
It's
actually have the will and the means and the if you the desire, if you want to, sure. If not, then there's no harm in not doing it, honestly.
Mm.
yeah. I think this kind of loops back into the lockout problem too, from like the very first question. I think once Sigma goes to the point where it's no longer locked out, you'll probably like, I'm sure Kiki and I and the rest of my group will have no problems clearing you through like 5, 6, 7, and working on 8. Like I'm sure that won't be a problem once lockouts aren't a thing. It's
Hmm.
just that lockouts creates this it's a very loot centric viewpoint. Like
Yeah.
if we're
Yeah,
not getting to chess and we're not being efficient, then it's time lost,
yeah,
unfortunately.
it
But
is.
when it unlocks, it's not going to be a problem because we could clear you on, you know, Tuesday and then do our regular raid night on the weekends and have it not be a problem at all.
Yeah.
Which is
And not
definitely
everyone's
problematic.
lucky enough to have a group of friends who raid who would even think to offer that too, though.
Right, absolutely. And unfortunately, in my case, my group is. And I mean, we're friendly, but I mean, I'm friends with a couple of them for sure, but not to the point where like we're talking every day, and it's,
Hmm.
you know, what I'm saying like they are my raid group, you know,
Yeah.
and I mean, I love them to pieces. I wouldn't ask I wouldn't ask for another raid group in the world, but at the same time, they're not like the relationship that you would have with FC members with whom you raid, which is your situation normally, versus I have people on other servers for whom I am friends with, but I also raid with, and that's pretty much the extent of any and all of our interactions outside of like our group chat that we use. So,
Yeah, and in a way, I find that can be a lot more efficient, just interacting with people through rating. We've had a couple setbacks where, people's feelings are an issue,
hmm,
and
Hmm.
you don't have that in
a raid group like mine. Well,
exactly.
well, I mean,
Like
you
you don't
might,
want to hurt your friends' feelings, but when things aren't working, you need to tell them, right?
and
Yeah.
handing out critiques to your friends is kind of like you have to tread lightly,
Yeah,
versus
it's
like versus like
walking
constructive
on
criticism.
eggshells type of thing.
Yeah. So.
But I mean, I like I said, I wouldn't like you said, I wouldn't trade my raid group for the world. I love how much we've progressed. Like I am not the best player. I try hard,
Hmm.
but I make mistakes all the time, and they're not like, oh, you suck, get out of here, which I'm very grateful for because I think I do mess up a lot compared to like other people. But eh,
Well, I mean, that'll vary from group to
I
group, but anyway.
try.
Hmm.
Anyways. Okay, so moving on to the next complaint here, we have number 4. PvP in this game is awful and dead within a week. Now, unfortunately, I have only PvP'd to the extent that I leveled, my many characters to 70, and it was quite literally. I mean, what was it? The Feast, the new one, Shatter, with all the crystals, and it was in the snowy area. That is that the right one?
That's frontline.
Well,
Uh,
oh, what did I say? The Feast? Oh, shucks. Yeah,
yeah,
Frontline. So yeah, I did that one a lot. I did Astrologos, however you want to pronounce it, with the MOBA and the giant robots and forward and back and uh, and
yeah,
all that
Astrologos was
fun.
great.
Yeah, it was fun at first, and then it just died off the map in the face of the universe, and no one's doing it ever. What are your thoughts and feelings, Domly, on this topic?
I feel like it's definitely a correct statement that PvP after a week from whatever being released is dead. We've all seen the screenshots of people who have like 60-minute, 400-minute, 600-minute queue times for PvP and not getting in. I think they're trying to address it a little bit with this new frontline roulette thing where there's like a specialty every day. But
They're trying. They're trying so hard to like,
they
please,
are.
please love PvP. We're sorry. We're trying to make it great and fun and all this other stuff. And the player base is just not biting at all. I have no
Yeah.
idea why. It's not bad. You know, it might not be personally what I'm like log in and like, I really would love to PvP right now. That sounds like some fun times.
I think that like Final Fantasy draws a different type of player than say like WoW or Guild Wars, whereas like from like the very beginning of the game, maybe not so much Guild Wars. Like you get that worldview world, that was one of their big selling
Hmm.
points, right?
Right, yeah, yeah.
And World of Warcraft, it's literally baked into their story. Like you are Alliance, you are Horde, you hate each other. This is this is it goes back to Warcraft 1. But like you look at Final Fantasy and it's this is mostly PvE centric stuff. And then when they give us PvP, we're like, all right, we'll play with it for a bit, but this is my PvE game.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that is kind of unfortunate because I do hear all the time. I mean, specifically with, well, only RFC members do I hear people say, "Oh, does this game have PvP?" And we're all like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
No one does it. Well, I mean, there is a very small niche market. Like you said, this game attracts PvE players, which is true. That is definitely like their core market. It kind of sucks because the players who do want a PvP can't because nobody else is doing it. So it's kind of like you, for example, you're not doing it, even though you probably would if it was like different or more people were doing it, and so it's kind of like a vicious circle. You know what I mean? To
Well,
the
if they
point.
come out with a new map, then I'll play it. Like I got the Astragalus monkey about 2 weeks after it came out. Like I played it pretty hardcore for the first week. I gave it about a week of rest and then I went back in again.
Well, yeah, but then again, that's the thing. Once the new PvP map comes out, then it'll just die just like Astrologos did. So I don't
Yeah.
know.
And
All right.
it's something you need like incentive for too, because once you get the monkey, you have no reason to go in there anymore.
Yeah, which is another thing they need to work on. All right. Speaking of no incentives, number three's complaint is the content lull between patches, and we were obviously just feeling that before 4.3. So I can tell you that before the patch even dropped, there was the lull. Activity was down. People were just doing nothing. Just I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw someone asking earlier today. I'm sorry, just the other day, saying they wanted to do like a Byakko EX or an O7S learning party for like an all or something ridiculous like that. And all of us were like, what? Why? Because what else is there to do between like a week before a patch? What is there else
Yeah.
to do?
I mean, like when it's late in the patch, like you log in, the only reason to log in is to say hi to your friends, right? Like to hang out with people.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, but I mean, this is more in touch with
Like,
content.
yeah, like once you have your mendacity for the week, you log in, you water your plants if you got a house, you do your roulette with your friends, and it's like, I guess I better go play something else because I got nothing to do.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, what about you, Adar? Were you feeling the content lull before patch?
I mean, I'm currently leveling a botanist out of boredom.
Oh my
So,
God!
Oh, when you're so bored that you go do
Gathering for
botanies.
yeah. And I mean, I'm sure I could find other ways to do it. But yeah, you could say I've been feeling the lull and that I continue to feel the lull whenever there is an awkward gap between content. Because even
well,
though like the release cycle before 4.3 had things like Eureka, which does give you a lot to do, kind of. It's also very monotonous.
right.
And once it's over, it's over.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say though that I do agree that, and even though a lot of people have commonly complained that they felt that certain content should be patched sooner, or like with this or that, and it's like, do you not understand the purpose behind doing a 4.3 patch, even though it's like, oh, well, we're only getting like a small portion of what was actually announced for the actual patch, and then they have the 4.35 patch being the rest of it. Like, do people not understand the rhyme and reason behind this? And I feel like it's lost on a lot of people. They're like, I want my content and I want it now, versus like, all right, you're gonna get bored in like 3 weeks. Have fun. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But and I feel like the biggest cause of content lull is the fact that uh, we are obviously at the end of the patch, and
Mhm.
we are excited for the new patch. So
Yeah.
new, yay, old, bleh. So the fact that we know what's coming is what puts us into the lull because we're anticipating, we're excited for it, and everything that's old now, even though it's still current because the new content hasn't come out, it's like old news, whatever. I want the new stuff now, and I'm bored with this now currently old stuff. So it's all about the mentality, and I feel like it's lost on a lot of people. So I have absolutely no words for these people. Anyways, moving on really quickly to number 2. This one it kind of explains itself. We all feel the frustration with server tick delays.
I don't even feel them.
No one cares about your PC privilege. No, I'm kidding. No, uh,
Do you
Adara,
never have a problem applying a potion?
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
That's a server tick delay.
I was not standing in that shit. Is another server tick delay, or something along those. Healing. Adara, you can agree with me on this.
Oh man.
That heal went off. That benediction went off. Literally anything like, oh, the tank died. That heal. No, that's on cooldown. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Or
Benediction cooldown and you're dead. Sorry.
oh yeah. And one other thing, I was in 07S last week, and there's a paralysis in that fight, and for some reason, I don't know how this happened. Our tank died because his paralysis interrupted his hollowed ground, and it still counted. No. It counted. Hollowed ground was on cooldown, and we were like, "What?"
Yeah.
It was so stupid. I had never seen it. Well, I've seen, hollowed ground go off, and of course you die. That's like the world's biggest complaint. Like I still
Pretty
love.
big paladin meme.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I love listening to the Miss Tech rage where she goes like popping hollow. What the fuck? Shit, like just her screaming obscenities. It was it was so great. And of course, you hear her and she's not like that at all. So it was a nice. I don't know, but yeah, like that's the biggest paladin meme, and I don't really feel like there's anything else we need to expand upon that besides they're there and we all hate them. So before we actually do list off the final complaint of the little list that we have accumulated, we do have some honorable mentions, and Adara has the first one. So take it away, Adara.
Hair clipping gear. Okay. I despite sometimes the appearances, I do put a lot of thought into my glam. And there are a lot of really great hairstyles in the game that I cannot use because they clip with my gear. And it's so infuriating. So I've literally had a ponytail for the past 4 months, with the exception of I'll change my hair if I'm going to a wedding because it won't clip with the dress, because some of the best gear items in the game have high collars. Or my Red Mage Glam uses this really nice coat that comes with a cowl, the Farlander Acton of Casting, and it literally clips with every single freaking hair. Even the ponytail, the end clips with it, and it's like, it's 2018. Can we not better program hair?
I mean, I think the problem is more prominent with female tunes, especially. A lot of the male hair. I mean, if it's long, it's like ironic in a sense. You know what I mean? A lot of the male hair is short. But I've also experienced. I mean, I know normally for you mentioned before that you have one of the shortest hairstyles a man can have. So the clipping is not usually too present. Not to mention the fact that
We get it. I only have problems with like the eye covering headband and like the scallop goggles, which I think are really nice for tanks. But my hair clips through the strap in the back, so
womp womp. Yeah, no, I've struggled with a lot of hats or a lot of gear with hairstyles I've had in the past, and it took me a while to find like the hairstyle I have now, which clips like nothing, but I doesn't look good with hats. So, well, I like finding the happy medium, like no clipping but can't wear hats. I'm okay. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. What about your honorable mention, Nomly?
I think the thing that I have the biggest complaint is that you can track people through the market board. You can see the name of their retainer. You can see their signature on the item. Like I feel like there's always going to be problems where you undercut someone and then you get a message 2 hours later from some entitled kid who's like, mine needs to sell first, you're a blah blah blah. And it's just like, I don't care. I'm pricing it for less than you, so mine's higher.
Well, I mean, I can kind of agree. I'm not so sure about the retainer bit because I don't usually track people based on that. I usually just track by the signature, and that's literally it. I don't pay attention to the retainer name, but mainly because some people have 8, so to track one retainer name, it's like, well,
Well, that's even the thing though. Like if you go just by signature, like I've had times where we're at like the 350s or the 320 stuff back in Delta, and someone's posted it so ridiculously low that you just buy it and then repost it yourself
Oh
for like
yeah,
6 times
I've
the price or something like that.
yeah, I've found my own signature once or twice, and I was like, wait, someone bought mine and resold it? Like that doesn't make sense. Like, okay, I
Yeah.
guess buyer's remorse, I suppose. Like, oh, don't need this, gonna resell it. I don't know.
I kind of like the way they did it in Final Fantasy XI, where it was pretty much an anonymous bidding system, where you could see the history of who had bought the item and for how much, but you
Right,
couldn't actually see what the prices were for the current items up. You could see how many there were up, like there was like 3 pots of bee honey or something, right?
right.
And the way they set it up was whoever priced it lowest would sell first, but it would go for the amount that was bid for. So like say they had bee honey up for like 10 gil and the next one up was 15 gil. If someone bid 15 gil, even though it was the same number as that person, it would sell to the person who was selling for 10 because they were willing to sell it for less. And I think I
Well,
like that level of anonymity when it comes to market board practices.
well, I mean, I think the intention was literally that you were supposed to have like an anonymous retainer name that no one knew it was you, but it does somewhat seem like an oversight in the
When you
application
have their
that.
signature on the
Yeah, I know.
item.
It seems like an oversight, and I feel like it's something that should be addressed. But for the time being, it is what it is. So I actually have one other honorable mention that I feel the need to quickly get through. And it would be the constant complaining. I know that we have it now. Hooray! Congratulations. You people have your fucking male bunny suit. Okay, are you all happy with the thing that you were all begging for months on end? And the reason why this is an honorable mention, at least for me specifically, is because the fact that before Stormblood, this issue arose, at least to my attention, before Stormblood, where I might have been at a fan fest or something. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it was a Q&A with Koji Fox and Yoshi P. And the, we as a player base had the opportunity to ask Yoshi P literally any question we wanted about, the new expansion, what should we expect, what are some new dungeons, literally anything we wanted about the development of the game and what to expect in the coming expansion. And yet, someone had the balls to ask, when are we going to get a male bunny suit? I mean, and I know I've talked about this topic before with a couple of people, and I mean, I will also agree that this game is pretty bad with its gender gear. How there is quite literally no cross, like there's no like, whatever the words, you know what I'm trying to say. And I know
Yeah.
I can understand why it's a common complaint, but it's like the time and the place. And I mean, I guess it was a I guess it depends on who you ask, but to me it was like you could have asked anything, and yet you asked, "Where's my bunny suit?" I'm like, hug.
I mean, I guess
Anyways,
you have to consider like the concept of they have to kind of like redesign said costume to work for the opposite gender as well.
right, right, yeah,
Kind of.
and I understand that, and I mean, well, which is why the developers are like, people want this. We're not going to do this unless you actually like want it. And apparently, enough of you guys were screaming and crying for it that here you go. We spent the money and time to give you the male bunny suit. It was even in the patch notes, like like front and center, like big letters, like here it is. Woo! It I found that funny, but
I
anyways,
feel like
all
a
right.
lot of would want a male like Lee's suit or like a female version of that Elvan guy's armor. I forget his name.
Whoever.
People are gonna hate me because they love this guy. It's the Elvan dude from Heaven's Word.
Elvan? You mean Ellison?
Okay, that was Final Fantasy 11 talk. You know what I mean?
Do I? I mean, I know who you're talking about, but I'm not going to bother correcting you because we need to move on to the number one complaint, and number one in no means, but in my humble opinion, it is still to this day the biggest complaint that I personally most commonly hear, and it is the post ARR quest line plus 200, however many there actually are, before getting to Heaven's Ward. Now, as a Heaven's Ward baby, I didn't particularly feel this because, as I mentioned in the previous episode, for the sole desire of getting to Astrologian, how the fire was lit and I was burning. But I didn't really feel this, the slog, the whatever you want to call it, from getting from I finished ARR to I'm now in Heaven's Ward. I did not feel that at all. I mean, what about you, Adar? Did this directly affect you in any way when you were playing?
So
Yeah.
this is an interesting thing where, because I played pre-Heaven's Ward,
Hmm.
I was playing when those were getting released as new content.
Oh, okay.
So it never occurred to me how much it was and how much of a slog it was, because it was like, oh, there's something new to do. And I thought that was just the game and the story. And then so I took my break, and then when I came back, the first quest I had when I came back was Heaven's Ward, because I had finished everything.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I technically experienced it, but the way that I experienced it was the way that it was meant to be experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never really had this problem, but thinking about it now and looking back, like, my brain can't separate what was technically ARR and what was the era after,
Right.
because it was so long ago. I'm sure if I started leveling an alt now, I would go absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I have leveled 2 alts for reasons that none of you need to know. Uh, so I definitely felt it those 2 times around for sure. So I mean, and I get the complaint, but then again, I'm also an individual who doesn't particularly get bothered by stuff like that. Like I'm a weirdo, and I actually enjoy repetitive stuff like that. I don't know, or I'm weird, but I mean, but that's the funny thing too. People who were complaining, not the same people, mind you, whatever. We did the same thing for Heaven's Ward. We did the MSQs as they came out, and it was fine. It was
Mm-hmm.
significantly shorter, and I noted that immediately. And they also had like more substance to the content. People were actually complaining like, "Oh, there's so much to do after Heaven's Ward." I'm like, yeah, but it's so good, and none of it's stupid like A Realm Reborn. So I mean, and it was so less too. It was like
Mm-hmm.
almost half of what A Realm Reborn did, give or take. I'm not sure on the exact math here, don't quote me, but yeah. So people's complaints about post Heaven's Ward just baffles me. I'm just like, it's not bad. Why are you complaining? It was good. It was actually really good. I loved it. I might have loved the post Heaven's Ward story more than the actual Heaven's Ward story, honestly.
Personally, I don't have a problem with it. Like, content is content regardless of the expansion for me. But there is definitely there's a lot between ARR and Heavensward specifically. When I came back from my break, I started a completely new character. And when I hit 50, it was like there are now quests everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense, but I don't know. Like I said, to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. But I guess to some people who aren't accustomed or even willing to like do like repetitive like quests, go here, go there, go this, do that, like which it did involve.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it can come off as very off-putting. But
Yeah.
in any case, did either of you have anything else you wish to mention or add or say anything to our lovely listening audience?
Yes, another completely off-topic question at random.
No, why do you do this to me? I just
All
answered
right.
last week.
Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
Could it be related to 14? A
What?
horse-sized duck or 100
Duck.
duck-sized horses? Is that what you said?
Yep. What would you
I
rather
didn't.
fight?
I did not sign up for this. First and foremost, I don't remember. This was not in the contract that Where's my manager? Hold up. No.
I mean,
um,
me personally, I think I'd rather fight the horse-sized duck because it's only one opponent.
Yeah.
Whereas if you have 100 duck-sized horses, they can swarm you.
oh my god. Why are we adding logic to this? I mean, I guess I can agree, but
I would
I mean,
want to tame the horse-sized duck and make it my noble steed.
Yeah,
that
yeah, there you
too.
go. There's another option.
Breath of the Wild, that little duckling. I don't know. And on that note, I think that pretty much wraps it up for this week's show. If you liked this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notified when we post a new episode. If there is anything else you would like to hear us talk about, please leave a comment. Until next time.
Bye bye.